You don't mind the hole so much in your underwear because you're thinking that I need to cut the belt a little bit. This week in e-commerce, episode 107. I am Mal Chia, back for another week as when this comes out, it's going to be the 1st of October. So we only have 3 months left of the year, Alex.
It's crazy. By the time this comes out, we'll be in Q4.
That
absolutely
is
bonkers.
Nuts. That is absolutely nuts. And we've also just had a very big weekend. We had 2 football grand finals for those who care about this sort of thing.
Yes, we did, except I couldn't tell you what the second one is, Mal.
NRL.
Well, there you go. I didn't know.
The Broncos beat the Panthers. So Penrith's run has ended. I believe they won 2 in a row, maybe 3 in a row. But yeah, and it was a very close game, 18-6, I think. So very low scoring.
Well, and there you go, a bit of a three-peat like the Lions as well on the AFL side.
That's right. Yeah, the Lions took out Geelong. So very happy about that. Good to see the Victorian teams go down. Everyone I spoke to was just like, yep, anyone but Victorian teams.
I know. I heard the same thing to the point where I started feeling bad for Victoria.
No, don't. They stole the Grand Prix. They get all the sporting events. Don't feel bad for them. They're doing pretty well.
Yeah, they had the home ground advantage and they still couldn't win. So there's that.
And did you watch the Snoop Dogg pre-game show?
Mid-game, I missed it, yep. Unfortunately. I saw a lot of content on TikTok the day before Snoop was kicking some goals, which was really cool to see. And now he said he's keen for a celebrity round with 50 Cent. So I'll be here for that.
Love that. And I heard as well, actually, you just told me that there's Sharon are releasing a Snoop Dogg edition footy.
They are. It's really cool. Only $40, so not a proper game match ball, but it's available for pre-order now. I've got it sitting in my cart. I've been thinking about it for a couple of days. I really want it. I love that collector's kind of once-off type moment.
I don't remember there being a Kiss one when Kiss performed a couple of years ago, because for me that was the epitome of the AFL shows. That was just an amazing concert which they put on. But I hear that Snoop Dogg was really good too.
Yeah, well, maybe they'll start to make it an annual thing, and as they should. Drawing these big names, how can they get some merch out of it?
Yeah, absolutely, and looking to really grow the game of AFL. From what I understand, trying to push into the US now as well. I actually did see a very funny video about how they were talking about all the US punters, the kickers jobs in the NFL are now going to like all these Aussies. So it's like protect American kickers in football, because all these Australians are coming in and stealing their jobs.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a lot to get into as we head into Q4. There is no shortage of news out there, so we're going to try to get through this as quickly as we can without taking up everyone's time. But we're going to start off first with Meta. At Meta Connect recently unveiled their new Ray-Ban smart glasses. I'm not sure if you saw the video, but it was very interesting. A friend shared it with me, so thank you, Dave from Proper Fake, who shared it with me, and it was just like a comedy of errors because nothing worked on this live demo. Zuck was on stage trying to get the glasses to like follow instructions, like follow a recipe, doing all these gestures to call different people, and it just would not work. It was pretty embarrassing, to be honest.
It was embarrassing. It was awkward, just waiting for it to work, and then you hear the kind of awkward laughs from the audience. Everyone's like, "What's going on?" It's the reality of a live demo, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And also, the excuse as well for why it didn't work. So he threw over to Andrew Bosworth, who's the CTO at Meta, who then actually blamed the fact that they had routed all their traffic through the dev server. So essentially, DDoSing themselves, which is interesting, and I don't quite buy it as well.
Well, it's either option's embarrassing because they're saying that they didn't test and they didn't practice, or they've just, like you said, they've DD'd their own servers or whatever, DDoSing themselves. Either outcomes, it's not very good.
Yeah, not for one of the most valuable companies in the world with all the resources, more resources than God.
Mm-hmm. And billions of dollars being put into this.
Have you ever had a tech fail during a live demo?
Absolutely. I think how you hold yourself in that situation and how you get through can often be more impactful than the demo itself. I don't think that's the case here with Zuckerberg. There's not really an excuse. But yes, tech always seems to have its way to fail just when you're talking about how good it is.
Yeah, I've gone into a platform and there's been UI changes. I'm just like, oh, I don't know where to find it. I'm just stumbling around for 2 minutes going, I swear it was here last week. I don't know where it is now.
Yeah.
All right. And in sunscreen land, we have yet another brand. So Aspect Sun has joined the SPF list of shame, with the TGA recently recalling their product due to potentially inaccurate SPF claims. So they're following on a bunch of other brands now. So I think the third or fourth big brand, which has fallen victim to this.
Yes, and they all, from my understanding, share that same base formula. So I imagine the TGA will just be going, sunscreen by sunscreen at this point, going through, all right, who are those that have that same base formula? Because they did flag that there could be more items added to this recall in the next coming weeks.
Yeah, look, and especially getting into summer as well, we really need to be careful about this sort of stuff. And sunscreen's all about trust, right? So you trust that when it says SPF 50 and you go out there in the sun for like 2 or 3 hours, that it's actually going to work.
Yeah, and it's doing something with trust where it's making those historical players go back to the basics, who's been doing this for so long, and trusting those rather than new players in the space.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of new players in the space, Nike Skims have just recently launched. So we talked about this months and months ago, thinking it was a pretty cool collaboration, with Nike hopefully leveraging some of Kim Kardashian's Skims clout. And finally, the collection has launched last Thursday. So it's a 58-piece collection, which combines, Skims contouring designs along with Nike's performance. But the market doesn't seem to be, well, some of the feedback from experts in this space doesn't seem to be too excited about it.
I think it's potentially a bit of overhype where there have been several months of delays here. So although this is the first time I've seen the products and seen how this is all going to come together, it feels like it's old news already.
Not just that, I think everything in the collection kind of looks like we've seen it before. I've seen leggings, we've seen sports bras, we've seen it all, and it's just more of the same, but with Nike and Skims branding, rather than anything which is truly innovative in this space. Because even some of the claims around like contouring and things like that, there've been other brands who've been doing that for quite a while. So I'm curious to see whether it can actually get cut through.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see whether they keep this as a kind of single drop collab, or this becomes kind of more of that ongoing piece for them in their women's range. I don't know if that's been made clear, if they're kind of trying to see how this first range lands and then they'll see if they're going to keep it going on, or if it's just that capsule one and done.
Well, it's all about money, right? Like, if it makes enough money, I'm sure they will come out with the sequel.
For sure. Look, I think you've spoken about Nike a lot. We've spoken about Nike a lot. This could be a bit of make or break for them if they're going into those collabs and they're just not getting that cut through.
Well, Nike's so big anyway, and the sales actually did decline again for another quarter, with everything which has been talked about over and over again. But they have gone back with a pretty cool brand campaign. I'm not sure, have you seen that one? The Why Do It campaign?
No, I haven't.
So they haven't got rid of Just Do It, but they've kind of pivoted it to be more about why do it. So again, going really back to the DNA of being an athlete. So I thought that was pretty cool, that they're ramping that up again rather than just focusing just on product messaging. So, and I think there's been some degree of innovation this year with some of the new products they've released, particularly the new shoes. I've got the new Ava Rover. It is honestly the most comfortable shoe I own. It is ridiculously comfortable.
Okay, there you go. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, it might be my new festival shoe.
Great. Good season for it.
And also another story is that a lot of brands are now moving into the male customer. So the last few months have seen a lot of new brands such as Dr. Squatch, Dude Wipes, and Lumen, who are making meat-flavored protein colognes, which is just like a bit batshit, I think, and really focusing on male consumers. Now, males were always used to be sort of this, not necessarily an afterthought, but, you kind of add something on for the men afterwards. And even a lot of brands who kind of start off focusing on men, such as activewear brands, such as Riderwear, where I was from, they have pivoted towards being like 90% women. So men over the last several years have become kind of this market to segment in a lot of different categories. Is this start of a change?
Well, I think it should be. Like you said previously, there've been that afterthought. This article called Men a Neglected Consumer Base. I don't know if I'd go that far. I thought that was quite funny. But yeah, people need to feel like products are marketed to them in a way that resonates. And if they don't feel that at the moment, then there's absolutely an opportunity.
Look, and I think there's a couple of other brands as well in Australia. Like Mr. Jones is a brand which I found at the Beauty Expo, who were focusing on premium luxury skincare for men, and it's a really good product. Like I fell for the I fell for the sales pitch. I bought a few of them, and I've been really enjoying it. Hopefully, you can see that in my skin, and the fact that I'm glowing right now. But it does seem to be a bit of a market as people look to expand, because particularly when you think that the women's market is so oversaturated in things like fashion and beauty, skincare, that you got to find where the white space is, and maybe men is that white space now.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I always found interesting, and they spoke about this all the time at university in marketing, was who actually buys the product.
Hmm.
And I do think the men products suffer from this a little bit when it's the women, or sorry, the wives or the mums, for example, that are purchasing these products on behalf of the guys in their lives. And so they need to be marketed towards both. And that could be why there is that kind of gray space.
And I think that's something which years and years ago, the Old Spice commercial, right? The guy you wish your man was, something like that. That ad was a fantastic ad, one of the best ads of all time. But that was one which was very much targeted at women more so than men, because they knew that in this category it was the women buying for the men. But again, I wonder whether more men are now being more conscious about that, since people being single and not necessarily being in a relationship, it seems to be on the rise as well. And Dr. Squatch was actually a brand where they had Alan Richardson on there. So Alan Richardson from Reacher
Yes.
doing the ad, and he's very much a man's man.
Yeah, and I Dr. Squatch as well, a lot of TikTok content, which I think is great. So not only are they changing up their type of content, they're also making sure that they're on TikTok. They've got comedians as kind of spokespeople for the brand. They're doing a really good way of making some noise here, regardless of whether it is for women or men.
All right, we're going to get into our deep dives now, and we've got two topics this week. The first one, which we're going to dive into, is related to an article which I shared with you from the Atlantic around recession indicators and when to know if we're in a recession or not. Because I've felt very much for quite a while now that the Australian economy is very much under strain, and again is in a recession by everything but name, especially given that we've got weak economic growth, unemployment appears to be rising, interest rates are still relatively high, and inflation is also high. When you look at all these things, I ask myself, are we actually in a recession, and what does this mean for retail?
Off the back of our conversation last week as well, when we were talking about people have an increased confidence in spending, but then the week before we were talking about maybe that's not the
In
case.
the US,
So yeah, in the
Yeah.
US. So there's lots of conversations going on around this at the moment. And I think, like you said, recession in everything but name. I think it just serves as a reason why everybody's conscious to their pockets.
And in the US, especially, because to quote from the article, was like Alan Greenspan was who was the head of the Fed over there, was suggesting that things like luxury, you start buying fewer things, which used to be necessities. So the example which he provides is underwear, that people buy underwear fewer and farther between. I read an article that you're actually meant to get new underwear every 6 months. Suddenly you start dragging that out. You don't mind the hole so much in your underwear because you're thinking that, okay, maybe I need to kind of like tighten the belt a little bit. And even last week when I was speaking at ETAL, speaking with Gary Head, who's the company secretary at the Shop Association of Australia and New Zealand, he was suggesting as well that behaviour is very much changing. That people are buying those luxuries fewer and actually trading down quite a lot, which we see in a number of different categories as well.
Absolutely. I think that fewer and further between piece, we're seeing it manifest in lots of different ways. One we bang on all the time is bag charms rather than people having bags, right? So how can people find those, I don't know, substitute for cheaper thrills, really?
Yeah. Yeah, look, and I think you typically will see that a recession, you'll know it's a recession after it's already in a recession. Yeah, as well. And a lot of it feels like that we kind of are, and that while the leading indicators for that are suggesting that we're not quite in a recession yet, the economy is growing, inflation is reducing. At this time, unemployment is still fairly stable at around 4% at the moment. We are seeing some leading indicators to that, such as job vacancies actually decreasing as well over the last few months. As well. So while inflation has remained relatively stable, we're not creating as many new jobs. And in the US, that's definitely a big problem as well, where I think last month there was only 20,000 new jobs created in the US, which is alarmingly small for a country that size as well. And this month, I also saw earlier today that the big four banks have said that they're not actually predicting that, well, are not intending to make an interest rate cut in the immediate future as well, suggesting to me that they've also got concerns that the economy may still be overheated, particularly when you look at the housing market.
Yeah, I saw that from Combank last week actually about the employment rate and that accessibility piece. I think yeah, we're not going to see much changes over the next few months. Everyone's going to see how that kind of spending increases as it should in the festive season. That'll give us a strong indicator of where we're at.
Yeah, and I'm definitely seeing like a much softer September and likely October as well as we get closer to that, because people are thinking that, okay, my household finances are not where they should be. So I'm going to actually delay that purchase. I know that Black Friday is coming up. So if I don't need it right now and it's just a want, I'm going to delay that. I'm going to wait till I see the sales where I'm going to get better bang for my buck.
Yeah. So brands that don't go on sale or don't go on heavy sale during Black Friday, is there the advantage for them to start to address this now and talk about why now? You're not going to be ripped off in 2 months' time and find that the product you bought right now is 50% off. Get what you need.
Yeah, I think so. And look, there's a number of brands who I work with, who are kind of in this space where they're doing very, very light Black Friday sales, as we talked about last week. But the advantage there is that they're not going to be taking away from January, February, March. Because and I know several brands who are going to go very, very heavy through Black Friday because they need to recoup a lot of money which they didn't earn over the course of the year. They've still got the stock which they purchased. Sales are below expectation. So now they need to clear that stock, get the cash back in the bank, which means they're going to have to discount fairly heavily so that they can buy for next year. But it becomes, a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, or a vicious cycle, I should say, where you discount really heavily to get the money in the bank, but then by discounting so heavily, you just bring forward a lot of sales as well from Jan, Feb, March, and you end up having really tough months throughout that period. Whereas the best way to do it, if you can, is to just keep it slow and steady. Yeah, and we've had this obsession with this hockey stick like growth. We want to see these huge numbers month on month on month every year, 50% growth, 100% growth every year. But the reality is that, like Labubu, when they've just become so oversaturated and so overheated in the market, that your supply outstrips, well, your demand is, can't keep up with the supply and the hype.
For sure. I think we'll see some Labubus on sale coming into this festive season as well.
I reckon so. All right, and our last story of the day is Amazon have copped probably the biggest fine, I believe, which they've had in their history, in that they've been fined Australian $3.8 billion for misleading subscription tactics, with the US regulator accusing them of using a lot of dark patterns to sign people up for Amazon Prime. Now, I'm a huge Amazon Prime customer. I actually love it. I voluntarily did it, and I have no reason to ever leave Prime. But this feels like a bit of a slap on the wrist for the fact that, yes, it's a huge sum of money, but a lot of people then didn't unsubscribe after they actually mistakenly signed up for Prime because they see the value in it.
Yeah, I think it's subscription's always tough because it feels hard if it feels hard to get out of them, and there's lots of hoops to jump through on the out, so people end up staying. But if they've delivered the value, I suppose, I don't know, is the penalty the price for them to pay for that acquisition?
Well, from what I understand, Amazon makes about $2 billion a day anyway. So in sales. So given the margin, it probably takes about less than a month to actually repay the fine, and I'm sure this is all partly covered by insurance as well. But a lot of it seems that, it's a cost of doing business for them. Like, we're going to do some potentially dodgy things to get people to sign up, encourage them to sign up, with the expectation that once they're there, they're not going to leave. And I think a lot of people, again, like I said, saw the value in it as well, because Amazon Prime is probably one of the best bundled services in terms of the music, in terms of the movies, but more than that, the actual service you get from Amazon, when you are a Prime customer. You unlock extra pricing, you get the next day delivery, you get so much more when you're with Prime. Matter of fact, I don't even shop on Amazon without the toggle on that to only show me stuff which is on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. It's such a strong value proposition. What do we think this message sends then, if people like Amazon are getting fined for strategies like this?
Well, for Amazon, I don't think it matters too much for them in the long term, but I think for a lot of retailers, it's still making sure that you are very conscious that when you are signing up customers, that you don't use dark patterns. And by dark patterns, what I mean by that is doing things like having like the opt-in already checked, or having things like hidden so that people aren't fully aware of what they're signing up for. And it's something which used to happen quite a lot early in the day, where people would automatically subscribe you to things. They would make it incredibly hard to actually unsubscribe, or it would be kind of misleading. And you used to see these things where when you unsubscribe, it takes you to another page, which you then need to select what you unsubscribe from. And they kind of make you jump through all these hoops just to kind of keep you in. And we talked about this a few weeks ago with the ACCC starting to look at that one-click unsubscribe as well. I think it's so important to make sure that in this era where we are a little bit more conscious about our data, about privacy, about deep fakes and things like that, that you want to be super certain that you are not misusing your customers' data as well, and making sure that your customers also have control over that. And that's something which EU, US, California in particular with their data protection laws are all about giving that control back to you, because they're very aware that big tech companies have pretty much free reign over pillaging and utilizing your data for whatever purpose they feel fit for.
Yeah, I think what I see where brands fall down the most at the moment is on texts and SMSs. That awful text stop to this number in capital letters, which makes me feel like I'm screaming at someone, just please kindly opt me out. So yeah, I agree. I think there's more eyeballs on this. There's always going to be, as data really is that kind of currency for brands, for tech partners, for everything on e-commerce.
Yeah, and particularly, with so much AI now as well, it's very easy for that to kind of fall in the wrong hands and then to get misused as well. And I do want to make a shout out to Shopify, who actually have now made it extremely hard to export your customer addresses, like the shipping address or the billing address from the system. It used to be actually fairly simple. You could just go to report, add it in there, add a dimension, and then there you go. You've got your entire customer database, including their address. But they've actually changed it to make it a shipping address ID now. So it's actually been hashed out. So it's a unique Shopify identifier, and they don't actually make that visible for you to bulk export. You still can view it by going into each customer's profile, but you can't just do a bulk export of all your customers' address, which some people may find to be, a bit restrictive. And I get that to a certain point, but I think taking that extra step to just make it that little bit harder for you to, export and have that data living on your living on your desktop, which then gets hacked and then ends up on the dark web somewhere. I think it's a good move.
Exactly. And, in the last couple of years, we've seen some really big data hacks from, well, you might help me here, Mal, Optus.
Yep, Optus. There's been quite a few. Powerhouse supplements. No, was it Powerhouse or Elite? I think it might have been Elite Supplements in Australia. Also had a hack earlier this year as well.
Oh.
There have been quite a few of them. I believe one of the luxury fashion brands in Europe, they had that as well. There's been so many, my brain has not been able to keep up.
Louis Vuitton was one of those ones in Europe. We read into that a few months back now. But it's in a world where, we need to build trust and everyone's nervous. You do not want to be on the headlines of those stories.
Yep, absolutely. My son watches BTN. He's 6 years old. So BTN Behind the News, which anyone who went to school would remember BTN. They've actually been doing a lot of stories around this as well, about how like fake websites, consumer websites are popping up all over the place, all these data breaches. And I think it's helping to educate them a little bit more, because my son asked me questions about that.
Yeah, well, that's great. The scams are looking very sophisticated. I was listening to a podcast from the ABC about this on the weekend as well. I'll share the episode with you. It's quite funny. But yeah, everybody needs to be literate, our kids, older generation, in just fighting that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And on that note, one more thing I am going to suggest to everyone is that if you watch on ABC as well, they have the Robodebt scandal, which I'm going to get stuck into tonight. It's a 3-part documentary, which digs into that whole scandal around all the Robodebt calls which were going out from the ATO and the repercussions from that. So what are you watching at the moment?
Interesting. I'll have to get into that. There was another ABC robo with that guy who his card would just accept any amount. That was a good podcast I listened to recently. But I've finished all my reality shows, so I'm on the hunt for something new.
Well, if any suggestions, please let Alex know. I will flick through some of mine. What am I watching at the moment? I've just finished watching Murders in the Building. That's pretty good. Any other docos? I watched one about the catfishing, Unknown Caller,
Yes,
catfish. Yeah, that was crazy. So definitely worth a watch. There's
that was
yeah. All right. On that note, that's all we have time for this week. Keep innovating, keep growing, and keep selling. And we'll see you back next week.
see you next week.